Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Uncensored CMO. Now, if you haven't noticed, the NFL season has just kicked off. Now, I've recently got into the NFL, and particularly the Super Bowl, of course, where we see some of the best advertising on the planet happen. So in this episode, I'm joined by Tim Ellis, who is the CMO for the NFL, and Glenn Cole, who is one of the founders of 72 & Sunny, who does all the creative work. This is one of the coolest conversations about creativity and how creativity can transform an industry and grow an audience massively for American football. This is a lot of fun. I know you're going to like it. Here it is. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Great
to be here.
Maybe, Tim, if I start with you, give everyone listening and watching a bit of a sense of your career and how you got to where you are today.
Well, I started as an actor, believe it or not. I worked in the theater for a while, several years, and then lived all over the world, doing all kinds of weird jobs, like working as an actor in Tokyo. I worked on tractors when I was in the Middle East. I was working on oil rigs in Scandinavia. Like I did all kinds of weird stuff, and then came back, got into the advertising business. Was an agency guy actually for half of my career, or at least used to be half, about 12 years. And then made my first big client. My biggest client wanted to hire me, so I went over there and then never looked back. I actually loved being a client. I love creativity and I love being a part of that. And so I found that I could contribute the best as a client, and I could ensure that the best work actually got out there to the world. And I love working with agencies, and I love working with great creative teams. So that's been my career.
Fantastic. Now, when did you and Glenn first meet? Because that goes back to before the NFL, doesn't it?
So before the NFL, I was at Activision, where we had Call of Duty and Destiny and Guitar Hero, a lot of big titles. And I came there from Volkswagen, where I know we're going to talk about Super Bowl today, but when I was at Volkswagen, we did the little mini Darth Vader ad with the kid, who has become now a pretty famous ad. And so when I came to Activision, I wasn't going to go backwards. I wanted to move forward, right? I wanted to do like stuff that hadn't been done before. And so I was there, and the agencies that were giving me ideas, they just were not getting me excited. And I kept trying to sort of work with them to get it to happen. It just wasn't happening. So I heard about these guys. He actually had a pretty small shop at that time. And so I met them, and I'm like, wow, these guys are the real deal. I mean, like the partners. So I met him and a few of his partners. And like the pedigree of where they'd come from and the type of advertising they'd been doing and so forth, I could tell that they were really the best in the business. So we pitched the business, and they like killed it. And we had, 7 years of a very successful relationship. Soldier in All of Us was the Call of Duty theme that we kept doing, again and again. So I think that sort of what we work incredibly well together. So that's where we first met. Yeah, when Call of Duty.
Amazing. So Glenn, how was it for you when meeting Tim, and tell us the moment that happened?
Tim was introduced to me by Eric Hirschberg, who was the CEO at the time at Activision, and said, you got to come over. I want you to meet the greatest CMO on earth, Tim Ellis. So I was like, well, that's quite the intro, a lot to live up to. And we hit it off right away. I think we're both passionate about creativity. We're both passionate about sports. So he had come up in advertising in Europe at a time when I had been, I think, running the Nike global Nike soccer business. Sorry, football. For those Europeans listening, so I have to be my American self.
We'll be doing that a few times in this episode. Don't worry.
But it gets confusing. And he was aware of the work I had done. I was aware of obviously the incredible VW work he'd been doing, and so there was mutual respect right away. And I think the relationship's grown from that mutual respect.
Yeah.
We both see each other as creative people. We both see each other as strategists, and we both see each other as, I think, unlockers of humanity for brands.
That's very, very powerful. I mean, today it seems like so many agency-client relationships break down. They don't tend to last as long as they used to. What's the secret to the kind of longevity you guys have had as a team?
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, a lot of the relationships now are very transactional, right? And I think that we spend a lot of time sort of talking about and finding what's the right expression of the vision that we have for this brand or, our relationship. And I think that as we do that, we get better and better articulating that, and then when we see the work, of course, it just builds on what we think and what we believe, and we have a very open, transparent discussion about everything.
Yeah.
You know, anything from a big idea to the smallest edit or sound or something in a piece. So, and he and the team welcome me in. You know what I mean? Like for example, when we do edits and stuff, they'll work on it for a little bit before I get there, but they actually want me in the edit. They want me at the final sound, right? And we figure things out together, and we discuss, and sometimes we argue, and sometimes we debate, and at the end of the day, I think we always come to a great place together, and I want to know that he loves the work. I mean, that to me is very important. So I think that our relationship has just been based on mutual trust, transparency, the willingness to sort of like a big family dinner. You're willing to debate things, and maybe get really intense about certain things. But at the end of the day, you love each other. You're like a family. You're gonna find a way, and you don't ever cross the line. So I think that's been some of the secret to our success.
With a bullet, high trust relationship. We didn't start with high trust. You build trust over time.
Yeah.
But I think it is a very rare thing in our business today. I think it's a crisis in our industry today. The trust levels in a relationship. I think it's the greatest thing holding great work back right now. So we at 72 and Sunny, and I personally really value this relationship, because we are at a point where you can just be blunt with each other, and nobody takes it personally. It's just, hey, I have a perspective that you should know about, and he receives my perspective as that. It's a perspective. Might not be the right one. He gets to be the decider on things, and vice versa. He gives me a perspective, and I encourage our teams at 72 and Sunny to receive it as a perspective. And before we opine on it, try it. It might lead us somewhere.
Yeah, no, he's really good at that.
And it might also lead us to hey, here's what we try, and then share what you learned, so you bring him along the journey, because it might be, look, that seemed like a good idea. It's a terrible idea. Look at it, but he'll be the first to say, maybe not so much, but thank you for trying. Yeah, and that's how the trust gets built.
That's right, and I appreciate that, because I know that if they say they're going to go off and try it, that they will, particularly if he's involved, right? And I think, and if it doesn't work out, I'm like, okay, well, all right, you've proved to me it doesn't work.
Yeah.
That's fine. I wanted to explore. I wanted to see. Now, most of the things I think that we go after usually end up in a really good place. There's a few times it doesn't. But I can see him at times coaching his teams, don't reject it before you try it, because you never know. It might actually end up being something that's awesome. Or it might not be exactly the way we said. It might, find another avenue of expression, which led you to something which is awesome.
That's right.
And then that's happened several times, right? So it might not be exactly what we thought, but then the process leads you into something which is really great and cool. I think that trust, because otherwise you're not able to sort of give your whole self to the process. So I think that's been
one of my mantras: try it, then debate it.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. We're working on a theory actually at System 1 about creative consistency and also the compounding effects of relationships, because what we observe with all the data we've got is that there's something quite powerful about ideas that repeat and relationships that last, that have this compounding effect as teams work together and as creative kind of evolves rather than gets changed every time. I mean, what we see is when you suddenly make a change in strategy or change in creative, you see this dip that goes down before it kind of comes back up again. Yeah. So we're working on this theory, but I think there's something in the power of the kind of relationship you've described and the consistency that you've brought to the work and the longevity of it.
It's interesting when you look at a consumer, the average person's behavior in their relationships. They want consistency in their relationships, and that with their peers, their friends, their colleagues, but also with their brands. And when brands get schizophrenic, you have to pause to decide, reevaluate the relationship. And so I'm interested to see the results of the data, but it definitely passes the eye test.
Yeah. And knowing where it doesn't matter if it's creative or not. Does it feel like it's coming from the brand? And obviously you have to create what that should be, that expression or that personality. I mean, you learn in your earliest years of brand management, that brands are like people, and that if they're one way one day and one way the other day, you can't trust them or whatever. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. It doesn't mean that you can't have a lot of expressions that all come back to the same place, right? I mean, we I think we very early on determined that the NFL needed to be more human, needed to be more compassionate, right? Needed to be more emotional. And I think that, so when we do work that might be highly, if there's ideas that come to the table that might be highly creative, but don't feel like they fit that personality, it's like, it doesn't matter if they're a cool creative idea. It doesn't feel like the brand. If it's not emotional or if it's not authentic and human, then it shouldn't be part of our expression, right? We need to be able to have the courage to put it aside, even if it's a great, clever idea. If it doesn't feel right for the brand, you got to put it aside. And I think that we've become, I think, quite good at that. There's been one or two things that we've done that didn't feel right. And even like, the most annoying thing in the world is like, if he's not a part of everything we do, right? He's a part of the biggest,
Yes, I
most
am.
important,
Oh, I am.
the most important projects. But like sometimes he'll like say like, oh, why'd you guys do that? I wouldn't have done that. Like, what? Like so like
Usually when we go slapstick.
but it's rare. It's
Yeah.
rare. It's rare that we do anything that doesn't really afterwards doesn't pass the sniff test of
Yeah.
like it should come from the brand. And I think we've been very highly successful at that. I think that making because these guys, the football players, they're like modern day gladiators. They're massive, right? So when you show these players in a very human, compassionate, vulnerable way, it's very attractive, right? It's very appealing to see these massive men showing a softer, more sort of emotional side of themselves. So whether it's some humor or whatever it is, to show that side of them is it's a very attractive thing, and it's really worked well for the NFL. And I think it softened a lot of the image. It made us more relatable, and it made us more really like attractive.
Yeah. Actually, Tim, you used a phrase I think I picked up, a helmets off strategy.
Yeah.
Which I think is quite powerful, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
helmets separate you from the
That's
players,
right.
don't they? Whereas if you see the emotion the players go through in a game, or the relationship they have with their spouse, or
Yeah.
the pain that goes into training, or the dramas that happen off the field with contracts, this kind of thing. And I know there's a bit of a trend on Netflix at the moment to doing the behind-the-scenes kind of series, like
Yeah.
Drive to Survive and Formula One. But all the kind of, by opening up, the players to the world, or the world to the players kind of thing, can be quite powerful, kind of all the stories that go around.
Yeah, it was a simple but fundamental shift of the total approach to marketing, and honestly, I felt it so strongly before I ever even came here. Like, so when I was interviewing, in fact, this is the room where I had all my interviews for the NFL one day. In fact, today is also the anniversary of my 6th year.
Let's
Congratulations.
go.
Woo!
Yeah.
There you go.
So, but I this sort of like helmets off strategy that I just coined the strategy helmets off. And it was quite practical in many ways, and in other ways, it was sort of like, again, getting back to sort of the emotional side and the more human side of the brand. And so it was like, okay, they all wear helmets. Like even when they score a touchdown or something in the end zone, they're not allowed to take their helmet off. So from a very practical perspective, most of our fans only know a handful of players, what they look like. They definitely don't know who they are, like, like who they are as people. So it was like, okay, well, let's get people more familiar with our players. So anything that we're doing, unless it's a highlight of them playing the game, is going to be helmets off. And we're gonna find out who these guys are, not just as elite athletes, but who they are as human beings, what they care about, and we're going to get behind the things that they care about. And we're going to have them be the face of the league. And by doing that, it's sort of like, again, made the league more relatable, more human, more interesting, and it allowed us to tell stories that we could have never told had we not taken that strategy.
It's so seductive creatively to see the gladiatorial image on Sundays and Thursdays and Mondays, and I see it with creative teams who start on the brand. Initially, they're drawn to the gladiatorial image. They want to repeat the gladiatorial image. You saw it when the NFL tried, or when it went to Europe decades ago. It was kind of, they were positioned that way. The teams were positioned as these fierce gladiators. But once you take the helmets off, all the creative opportunities open up. Sunday, there's already plenty of marketing for them with their helmets on. That's what the games are. So getting to know the people, and I think it's even beyond the contract talks and the stuff you see on the Netflix series. It's the who they are as people, what they care about. These are really, really smart, strategic people. Everyone, if you've made it to the NFL, one thing I've learned over the last 6 years, they are big brains. Those guys, they are very calculated in what they do. They're very disciplined. Yeah. They have incredible value systems, some of the best value systems of anybody in my life. So, and that's really magnetic. You know, that's really where the like, wow, you inspire me, and I aspire to be like you, starts to kick in.
Yeah. And it brings me to actually one of my favourite bits of work you did. The season opening last year, you can't make this stuff up. Right. I thought it was brilliantly human and funny.
Thank you.
I always wonder if it's like the 17-2 and Sunny Crater team sat around a table going, right, how are we going to make a story out of this season? What are we going to do?
Yeah, that is almost the hardest project of the year, despite the pressures of Super Bowl. How do we create enthusiasm in a new way for a new season without getting caught up in storylines? And I think that is a much like our process. We do have a kind of a writer's room orientation. Yeah. Tim and his team are part of that writer's room. You know, when we share work, it's really a share and discuss. And hey, what if you did this? It's not as absurd as that, maybe. But
well, it's
you try to create an environment where crazy stuff can be on the table.
And what's culturally going to resonate that year? And you know, I mean, what's the sort of the pulse of the nation? You know, for those maybe who don't know what the NFL actually represents in the States, 2/3 of the country call themselves fans. And then like our biggest game of the year, the Super Bowl, 2/3 of the country will tune in and watch it, right? It's massive. And so understanding what your appropriate sort of place is that year and because we're very influential, right? We loom large in people's lives. So knowing sort of how to enter that season, that year, is really important. So one of my favorite days of the year is the day we get together as a team and we sit and we just really talk about, okay, like, you know, how should we approach this year? What should our themes be? What are the things that we need to really think about and so forth?
What's in the zeitgeist?
And sometimes in the zeitgeist can be like something like that everyone's saying that everything's fixed. Like all these guys out there saying the entire league is fixed. And every play, you know, like the whole thing is done by the NFL. It's all, you know, whatever. So like, let's just have some fun with that. Like these guys come up with an idea, and we weren't thinking that would be the theme of the year, but when they came up with that, which was definitely out there, right? We just thought, oh, this is great. It allows us to talk about the things we want to talk about. It allows us to have some fun, again, with the players, helmets off, right? With the players. And, you know, have a really unexpected expression and culture that people would just get a kick out of. And in fact, they did. So it was really, that was a great experiment.
So much of the kickoff is taking the temperature of the country and tonal. You know, I think we'd done a lot of like pump you up work before then, the years leading up to that, and that was a zag just by having a comedy piece.
Now, I don't want to get political, but this is an election year, isn't it? And like the news cycle is just crazy right now with crazy stories. But I love what you did this year to launch. But this is football country, isn't it? That was describe it a little bit for anyone who hasn't seen it, because it's very emotive and very powerful.
Yeah. Well, it's really about sort of like football is for everyone, right? We sort of open our arms like and embrace all the different sort of people who are impacting this game. And so you have young women playing flag football. You have people playing tackle of all different ages and genders. You have, you know, all the expressions of the game and all the sort of ambassadors, if you will, of the game, all coming together for this really intense, fun, emotional expression of this is football country. So it's not really about a place. You know, it's not a certain part of the country or whatever. It's about the joy of the game and all the people who are embracing the game and making the game better. And it's really about how all these people are coming together to move the game forward. In fact, a lot of the expressions of football country is international. So we have stuff, you know, whether it be from England or from Germany, Brazil, what have you. It's kind of cool because those are also expressions of football country. Now, we all know that football's, you know, that when you say football, it means they're a different thing in a lot of those countries. But the fact that they are also making their mark on the game and they're contributing, adding, and pushing the game forward is really cool. And we wanted to not just recognize that, but also embrace it.
When I watched it, the association I came with unusually was the New Zealand haka in rugby. That we know when they get together before a game, the New Zealand rugby team will line up and they'll do this haka dance and chant at the same time. And it's incredibly powerful, emotional, but very unifying. And it's one of their kind of secret powers when they embrace a game.
It reminded you of that?
Yeah. It's kind of like this chant, that goes through it, and this all together in this together as we approach, because it happens before the game. So it's what they do. It's the routine they go through before they take on the opponents.
We took this inspiration from what we call huddle culture. That's what happens in a huddle before people take a game. That chant's lifted from a high school huddle chant. And, one thing you touched on there, it is about football. I mean, by design, yes, it's an NFL ad getting people hyped for the NFL season, but it's also getting people excited about the football season at every level. And you look at where we started 6 years ago to now, there are women and moms are a big part of the game. We tried to feature that. Yeah. There's folks in Japan who are playing at a really high level. They're part of the game. They're in the ad. There's some of the best athletes in a high school in America now play at a varsity level with aspirations of being in the Olympics and maybe even getting a college scholarship.
And they're all real people.
They're not
actors.
So so we were like, look at football today. Yeah. That is it is an international version of a haka for the sport, though, not just for the NFL.
And that's what's so powerful about it. I mean, as a system when we test every Super Bowl ad, so I thought it'd be quite fun to put this through the Super Bowl test and see how it did. So I've got the data for you, if you're interested.
Please.
So out of 5 stars, 4.4 star, top 4% of all. So if that was a Super Bowl ad, it'd be in the top 4% of our entire database.
That's really good. We got to get that 0.6.
Right. Yeah, we'll go for it. The peak emotion was at 46 seconds when the chant got to its maximum, just before you get to the family in the, in the front room sort of thing. Top 3 emotions were excitement, amusement, and uplift, which is great. Best bit, I thought, actually, was that we measure how strong the emotion is. Very, very, very strong emotion. So we measure intensity of emotion. And that's very predictive of whether people will go and watch a game, act, talk to friends, that kind of thing. So pretty damn
great measures. I love uplift.
Me too.
In particular, because I think that is the role that this sport and this league play in our country and culture.
Yeah.
And where the opportunity is.
You always try to coin a phrase like, okay, what should this brand represent?
Yeah.
And that is what we all agreed. It should be uplifting the country. And a lot of that comes down to sort of, again, recognizing and embracing and shining a light on those who are really just growing the game and bringing more to the game. And hey, listen, I'm also really happy to hear the part about the emotional side. And then even it's funny when you said the chant got the most intense. I mean, how much did we talk about that and work on that and all that and push our teams. And just when we thought we were done, we're looking at no, we're not done yet. Let's just keep working and just try to find ways to sort of through the music, through the editing, or whatever, lift that emotion and get there. And so a lot of even our briefs and stuff, the briefs are okay, I want to feel the goosebumps. I mean, I want people to laugh and I want them to cry. So I don't know what we got to do, but that's got to be the end result. And ultimately, I think we're we're really good at that together and working our teams to get us there. And of course, sometimes you don't always agree necessarily with all of your teams about what's emotional, what's going to get the goosebumps and all that. So you got to make the call at some point. But we're usually right together on these things. And, we listen to our teams very carefully and evaluate these things. But then we make very, very important decisions, whether it be music, whether it be the edit, whatever, to kind of get to that place. Because we know the power of that emotion, what it can do. A guy called me last week. I don't think I've even told you this. But a guy called me last week and goes, "Hey, Tim, there's a bunch of 12-year-olds out in my front yard playing football. And guess what? They're singing your ad. They're singing your chant as they're playing.
They're not even my kids."
Yeah. And so I love that because it just reminds you of the power and the influence that you have with it. And having kids play that together and get into that emotion, to me, is incredibly important. And this year, you talked about politics and stuff. I mean, unfortunately, right now, we're just a very divided country. We're going to be really divided this year as a society because of the presidential election, right? So it's really a us versus them mentality. And, it's in all throughout the internet, and it's on people's, dinner tables, and you name it. People are debating and taking sides on things. So we thought it was more important than ever to really stand for uniting people. Yeah. What can we agree on? And some of that couldn't be quite practical about we can all agree that football is awesome and we all love it. But again, we're inviting everybody in and we're showing, and we want people to feel that there are things that bring us all together. There are things that really are a bond with all of this. And that's important to actually shine a light on.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about the audiences. So how many people tuned in for the opening weekend?
I think we ended up with an average audience of 40 million per game, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It was the biggest sort of opening weekend that we've ever done. And we'd never done a game to kick it off on Thursday and on Friday in Brazil, mind you, on NBC Peacock. So, right, that's not, so they had to go find the game, if you will. And then we had a game, of course, all the games on Sunday and then on Monday again. So it was the biggest weekend ever and the highest level of tune-in that we'd ever had, plus the highest level of engagement. So we measure everything when it comes to our engagement online and so forth. So it was an incredibly powerful opening weekend. The games were pretty good too. But I know that we had something to do with that, with the marketing that we did as well.
And last Super Bowl, of course, was also the biggest Super Bowl, wasn't it? And
yeah.
Am I right in saying that it was the most watched live event since the moon landing?
Yeah,
I think
that's accurate.
Quite incredible, isn't it? So what's been the secret to building the audience and getting more and more people to watch the game and see the game?
Well, obviously, a lot of things that we're doing with the game itself, right? Like all my colleagues in football operations and the commissioner and the health and safety teams, they're all doing an incredible job at sort of making the game more exciting. Creating opportunities to sort of the games are tighter, more points are being scored. All that is really, of course, helps people get into the game and love the game. I think that the way that we're sort of surrounding culture with the game in relevant ways is also really helping, right? And getting ambassadors into the game who are powerful in their own right. So, like, the great thing about the NFL is that there are so many highly influential people out there who love the sport, have a favorite team, have a favorite player, and we integrate them. Like we just talked about Football Country. A lot of those influencers are in the ads, right? They're in our communications. I have an incredible influencer and creator group that just does nothing but like bring in these people, men and women who love the game in their own right, have massive sort of online footprints and so forth, massive followings in their audiences, and we give them experiences that money can't buy, and they're helping us right grow the game. So we're surrounding sort of like, we're part of culture and driving culture with the way that we're approaching our marketing. And that's, I think, having a big impact on tune-in is as well.
So imagine one of the biggest influences has to be Taylor Swift, right?
Yeah.
So have you been able to
love her.
measure? I mean, look, if I just take it from a British point of view, I saw more headlines about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce than I saw about the Super Bowl back home. And
well, that's not quite true. Oh, maybe you did.
From where we
Yeah.
are. So it certainly seemed to reach an audience that wouldn't normally be reached by. That was my perception anyway, from afar.
So we measure everything, as you can imagine. So and there is the aspect of like the online buzz and just the general journalistic, impact and buzz that you get from Taylor and Travis. And it's really like it's a story.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not, and that story just kept building. Right. Because as an example, so the two teams in the Super Bowl were the 49ers and the Chiefs. Right. So the 49ers star fullback has a wife who makes these incredible like jackets and so forth. And she began to take on sort of like this massive following of people who loved her work. And so what do you know? Taylor's wearing one of her jackets to the game, right? And you can't make this stuff up, right? Like
which is our kickoff line.
Which is our kickoff line. But like I think that we know that what Taylor did for us from an audience growth perspective is that we measure a segment, 12 to 24-year-old girls and women. And it's about 8% of our total audience, and that 8% grew 30%. Cool. So we measure exactly what she brought to the game. And then, like I said, of course, there is just the amount of talk value, the storytelling that you get from it, and the excitement that you get from it. So we love Taylor, obviously, but we don't, we're very careful to not overdo it,
of course,
as well, because it is at the end of the day, you want to respect all of your fan base. But there's no doubt about it. She's brought an incredible excitement to the game.
But talking about you can't make it up. I mean, that final, like winning as the Chiefs did,
And then
the roll Travis. I mean, you just could not.
Yeah, and they meet
That's Hollywood.
under the confetti.
Hollywood
they meet at the
blockbuster.
middle of the field and
For a big kiss.
For a big kiss. I mean,
Yeah.
it's almost like if we had scripted that, it would be a Tim. It's a little obvious.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
let's not go that far.
Let's not go that far. Yeah, that's,
The bit I remember actually was that he almost played villain when he was screaming at the coach.
Yeah.
Do you remember in the first half he was something was obviously not going wrong and he went up and screamed right.
Well,
in the face
We were
and-
like that.
I'm
Was
like,
the script was to go argue, but take it down a notch. No, we didn't.
We all need a bit of negative tension.
You
But
need a
I'm
little-
hoping there's a peak end to this.
Well, you have to bring it back.
You have to bring it back.
Travis
exactly.
is intense. We've worked with him a lot. He's amazing. So is his brother, Jason. By the way, who has a great podcast too.
Yeah.
And their mom, their mom is amazing too. So that again, that's a story, right? Like the story between Travis and Jason and their mom was incredible, and that was before. That was before that, right? The relationship.
We put them in the kickoff ad.
Yeah, they were actually
we made
in
a
the
joke
kickoff
about
ad
the mom
before.
having a crush on Jimmy Garoppolo, the quarterback of the 49ers at the time, and they played along.
And I was at
He's a
the
good-looking
opening
dude.
game, sitting with a mom, and she said, "Well, I don't know about Travis. I don't think he's ever going to find anyone. He's just like, he's the most eligible bachelor
on,
in the
Donna.
world, but he's always moving around. He's always going here and there. It's like, I don't think he's ever going to find anyone." Turns out that she was right. He was the most eligible bachelor in the world. But like, who knows? I mean, she didn't even know at that point that they were already dating. But again, you just like, it's amazing how it all played out.
Well, talking about singers and entertainment as well, a bit of a confession to make to anyone listening. So my first experience of an NFL game was actually going to the Super Bowl in 2011, and I always felt like a fraud. I'm like, God, geez, what a games turn up to. But I was working on Gatorade at the time, who were a big partner of NFL at the time. So I got to go along with Team Gatorade. The thing that struck me was how much happens around the game as well. Yeah. I mean, I was bumping into big-time rappers and celebrities just at the trailer park bit beforehand, let alone the halftime show, which I think had Black Eyed Peas and Slash from Guns N' Roses drop in for a bit of a jamming session. It was just an incredible spectacle. I've never seen anything like it. But the whole thing is a show, isn't it? Like, I can see why everyone watches.
It starts really early in the week. I don't know when you showed up for that game, but like it starts, Tuesday, Wednesday, and it just builds. It gets more and more exciting until where you get right into the, to the day before the game, and then there's all these incredible. In fact, the first time I saw Taylor Swift was before the Super Bowl. Like I think on a Thursday or Friday night, she was playing a concert as part of the Super Bowl week. Right. So like we have incredible artists who are during the week who come. And then like, as you say, like, and then there's the tailgate, and then you'll have some of the biggest artists in the world who are doing the tailgate.
Yeah.
Right. And you'll see anybody and everybody, not just from the US, but from around the world who show up to want to be a part of it. And it's a spectacle. It's incredibly fun. And it's just when the game starts, people about ready to lose their minds. Right, by the time that kickoff.
100%.
Yeah.
I even actually, because we work on Gatorade, we had this sports science institute, and we were measuring the kind of fitness of the players and helping the nutrition. So I've got to go down the gym with some of the players a couple of days before the game and just see them work out. What I was fascinated by, again, I was quite surprised about this, was how specifically fit they are in terms of their position. And so for one of them it might be agility, for one it might be pure strength, for another one it might be cardio. Yeah. But it's like every kind of imaginable body type and shape and fitness is very specific, isn't it, compared to other sports where it's more everyone kind of might look the same.
One of the beauties of this sport, I think, and one of the things I'm most grateful for the NFL doing with this increased scale, because you could look at it cynically and say, well, it's just getting bigger and bigger. That is true. But we use it to bring more people into the game, not just to watch the NFL, but to play the game and learn all the things you can learn from it. And it is universally accessible. There's a position for everyone, and every skill set, every body type, every mentality, defense, offense. More than any other sport on earth, you can make a case for. I'm going to call it soccer. Forgive me, but. Really, and you can really specialize and become a craftsperson in that role and be very valuable to the team, invaluable to the team potentially in any role. So, and I do love that. I think in the other side of Taylor's helping grow the game is this commitment to opening the door and bringing more people in at the flag level and doing what we're trying to do behind the scenes to make it properly competitive at the high school level in America. Right now, I think it's in 12 states have ratified it as a varsity sport. 18 are on the way.
Describe the flag, because that's a really good example of, isn't it, extending the franchise into a new audience.
Even internationally, it's on fire as a sport. Just like it's off the charts, its growth. I think in England, in particular, I'm sure the NFL being there has helped, and the NFL is very active on the ground there, which is part of, I think, being a good brand, right?
Yeah, it's all. I mean, it's the most inclusive part about the sport itself, right? Like being able to play flag, anyone can do it.
Anybody,
in any gender, any body shape, it doesn't matter. Like, you can play. Also, is a much simpler and less expensive way to play as well, right? Like around the world. So, but we're intentionally really pushing hard to grow it here in the United States because we know it'll just bring more people into the game. I mean, if you participate, if you play the game, you're 4 times as likely to become a lifelong fan.
Of any sport, but definitely football.
But with football, yeah. And we also know all the data shows that, like, if you don't get a fan by the time that they're 18 years old, you're not going to get one. So youth flag is incredibly important. I mean, you can end up playing Madden and get to know the game, and that's an avenue as well in there. But like playing the game, whether it be tackle or flag, is incredibly important. So it became a real strategy for us to get people to actually, who normally would not be, playing the game, to sort of get excited about it and to elevate it as a badass sport.
Yeah, that's
not like a sort of a softer, weaker, if you will, expression of the sport, but as a true, cool, badass sport for men and women. And so to see some of these women that are playing this game right now is great.
Yeah.
And we take, like in our advertising and marketing, we take some of the best, sort of emerging young athletes, and we put them in our biggest pieces of communication. We just talked about Football Country. Well, that's got some of the coolest young women who are out there today, really like just killing it.
We see you,
right?
McKenna. We see you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in celebrating them and then working together with the 32 teams. So if the league, with the power that the league has in our platform, and then you think the power of those 32 teams and the athletes who play those teams, if we all work together, which we have been, to like really promote and to like recruit young flag players and to help them grow their local sort of like programs in their communities. I mean, just in the last year, female flag has grown more than doubled in 1 year.
That's incredible. Isn't it? That is amazing.
Yeah.
It wasn't long
ago.
ago. It wasn't long ago that it was considered kind of like, like wussy
something
or
you do like in the very
not
early
cool.
years before you play tackle.
Yeah.
And now it's an option.
Yeah.
Now it's seen as an option. And for the first time, it's going to be in the Olympics. So for the LA 28 Olympics, we're going to have flag football for the first time.
Good.
All these countries. 2 years ago, we did a Super Bowl ad with a Latina. So like the female flag quarterback of the Mexican team, Diana Flores, was the focus of that ad. These guys came up with this great idea. I met her in Mexico actually at the game. And I'm like, oh my God, we got to do this ad. I mean, she's
We were on the
incredible.
fence about it, and he calls me, he goes, okay,
Yeah.
I just met Deanna, we're totally doing that ad. That's what
We got to do this ad.
And she was running rings around everybody in that ad, wasn't
Well,
she?
we did our research. We're like, we had the idea for the ad. We didn't have the casting necessarily. And then we started researching her from the World Games. Actually, she and Vanita Crouch, the U.S. Quarterback, just blew our minds. She had probably one of the best games of her life at the time of that final. Yeah. And we couldn't stop replaying. We're like, this is as badass as an athletic, entertainment experience as anything we see.
Yeah.
And then we weren't sure though, and just because you haven't met the person, that Tim had the benefit of meeting her at the game.
I met her, and I was just like,
oh,
immediately, we got to do this ad.
She's a great ambassador for the sport, obviously.
Yeah.
Beyond
And
just
she
her
was,
skills.
and she still is. And we incorporated her. I think one of the things that we're getting really good at is that the ad is one big expression of it, or the campaign, or a Super Bowl commercial, what have you. But then everything else that we do, we incorporate the idea, the movement in our marketing, and even in the game. Because, for example, we have a Pro Bowl. So for the first time a couple of years ago, we decided, okay, we're going to do flag in the Pro Bowl because the players don't really want to get hurt when for them that their season's over. So, how can we inject athleticism and passion into the Pro Bowl? Well, let's do flag. And we also want to encourage people to play the game. So let's take our best athletes and actually put them out there in the Pro Bowl. Well, Deanna, coming back to what we're talking about, Deanna was one of the coaches. So she became an offensive coordinator for that game, for the Pro Bowl.
Very
and it was just a
stressful.
really
Peyton
cool,
Manning was really stressing her out, man. You could see it on TV. Vanita Krause,
just
the other
cool.
was Eli's, I think.
I do love how you blend in
defensive
past and current players, don't you? And
Yes.
play on the jokes and everything like that. It's very, very well done. Well, look, talking about new audiences, the other thing I'm fascinated, of course, is the fact that you now feature NFL in London. So, UK being the home of soccer, right?
Yeah.
So what are the kind of challenges in putting on, because also I've seen from a team point of view, right? You've got home advantage, which is a well-known phenomena. You're taking them overseas to a different country. They lose home advantage, and they're with an audience that are not as well kind of versed in, the stories and the statistics, and maybe haven't grown up with the teams. Yeah, how do you get around all that?
Well, I will say this. In the beginning, when we first started playing there, people did not really understand. They loved being there. They thought it was really exciting to see these guys out there playing, but they didn't really understand the game.
It's like a
and so they were sort of clapping at the wrong time of the game and so forth. And so, but now, the last 3 years that I've gone, it's awesome because they totally get the game. And it's all locals, and a lot of people from different parts of Europe also show up, right, to the London games. And it's just exciting, but they embrace it in their own way.
Yes.
Right? As an example, they love to sing. The entire stadium starts singing American songs. Sweet Caroline is being at the top of their lungs. It's just so fun to listen to that. And then, all the fans who come, they all wear their favorite team's jerseys. So you might have the Jaguars and the Titans playing, but they're all wearing Steelers and Cowboys and Seahawks and 49ers, whatever. They wear their own jerseys of the team that they love. And that's just kind of fun because they're embracing the game.
Yeah.
And so, sure, sometimes the home team is not really getting the most love in that game. It doesn't really matter. All the teams understand it. They think it's awesome to be in these countries. We're now, just this year, we went to Brazil for the first time. We'll have 2 games in London this year. We'll be in Germany again. We'll be in Munich this year. Last year, we were in Frankfurt. It's just awesome. And we have plans to go to the Middle East, to go to Asia. We're in a sort of part of our history now where we're really expanding the game globally. Yeah. And that's playing the game. That's also developing players throughout, all over the world. In last year's Super Bowl ad, we sort of celebrated the fact that we had a player pathway program in Africa. So it all took place that, we went to Ghana and talk about ambitious. So we went to Ghana, and we went to the biggest market on the busiest day of the year, and we decided to play tackle football in that market
while the market was live.
And it was just crazy fun. It was kind of scary, but it was crazy fun, and the ad turned out amazing. And again, so it was just sort of shining a light on some exciting things happening in the NFL where we're really pushing the game forward. Yeah. So every major campaign we do, we see it as an opportunity, sort of how do we expand the view of this game? How do we push the game forward? What can we do to sort of surprise people and do things that they didn't see coming and continue to push that game forward? And I think we've become pretty good at that.
Now, you've client side created Super Bowl ads, and obviously you produce Super Bowl ads as well. What advice would you give somebody to put on a good Super Bowl ad? Because it's the most competitive. I mean, given I've watched every single one for 5 years, there are 80 of the world's most phenomenal creative talents and brands kind of putting it out there, sort of thing. What's the secret to really winning that moment?
I'll start from the creative agency side, and Tim can maybe pick it up from the client side since he has so much success there too, across brands. It's very tempting to get caught up in the hoopla of it, and I do see creative people get distracted by I just have to just do something entertaining, and you kind of stop playing with your fundamentals. Like in a sport, you just start trying to dunk the ball. I don't know, shouldn't use a basketball metaphor. You just start trying to do crazy things without remembering what got you there. And so just staying purposeful about and focusing on what your brand really needs and treating it like just another media moment, I think is absolutely key. You almost have to over-rotate that way because Super Bowl creates this energy in the hallways that's unreasonable. I think people also underestimate how hard it is to get to a great idea. And it's very easy to want to convince yourself this is great when it's good or really good, and good or really good is not good enough in the Super Bowl. So I don't know how many rounds we go. We probably go 2-3 months, sometimes 4 months in development. we spend much more time in development than we do in execution. We don't fear short execution. We probably prefer it actually.
More, but we don't. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. There's trade-offs, but we measure. When we cut, we go.
Yeah, and I think here's what I would say. I had a CFO who asked me one time, well, don't you hate doing Super Bowl ads? Because, if they're not good, most CMOs just get fired. I'm like, no, I don't hate Super Bowl ads, first of all. Second of all,
Feel the fear.
I don't even think about getting fired, because if you think about getting fired, you're probably going to do a really lousy job.
Totally.
So I always remind people, like, this is fun.
Yeah.
Like, you get a chance to do a Super Bowl ad, this is amazing. Right? Like, to get in front of that many people with a great ad is just it's such a special opportunity. So, like, let's relax. Like, because if you get tensed up and everyone's worried, or you're like, oh God, we have to do that, you're not gonna have a great ad, because you're not gonna be relaxed. You're not gonna have the right environment to actually produce a great ad. So love the work and get excited about being able to do it, and just work your tail off to get to a great place. And then like craft the shit out of it once you get there, right? Like once you get there and you get a great ad, get the right directors, get the right people in play. Like, let's just really like craft the hell out of this thing. And so I think that we always, Glenn's right. We always do something which we know is uniquely NFL. Like, this is core to our helmets off strategy. This is really pushing the brand forward. This is going to sort of surprise people that the NFL came out with this. But like, they'll really embrace it and love it, because it's like, oh, I didn't know this side of the NFL. This is cool. I like this right now. I didn't know they were going to like talk this way. So I think that doing something on the one hand, which is true to your brand, but also something which is really, they didn't see it coming, right? To do something really different is important. And I think that ultimately, we always aim to be the best. Like, you've got 65, 66 ads that are in there.
Yeah, we're trying to win.
We're trying to win. Like, we want it to be the best ad, and our track record is pretty darn good.
It is good.
We've been in the top. I mean, I think every year we've been pretty much in the top 10, and we've been 1, 2, and 3 a few times. So like, and we take pride in that, because we know that in any given game we'll have between 20 and 50 million people who show up to that game. There's over 200 million for the Super Bowl. So that is our chance to talk to audiences that don't normally tune in for an NFL game. So it helps us kind of bring those people in and make them fans, right? This is our opportunity to make fans. So it is really from a brand building and a business perspective, that Super Bowl ad for us is really, really important.
Yeah. I mean, I pulled off the winners on our System 1 database, which measures emotional response to the ads for the last 6 years. The diversity of winners actually was quite interesting, and it shows the broad appeal. So, I mean, one of my personal favourites was Huggies. I don't even remember the Huggies, we got you, baby. But, I mean, imagine, like, showing kids born on Super Bowl morning actually being able to... It's the innovation that Super Bowl creates as well, to try things that haven't been done before. But, Huggies won. Microsoft won 6 years ago with the game controller. That was emotional, showing this young kid who has a disability, using the game controller to get online, which is incredible. Disney have won. Jeep, Groundhog Day, tapping into popular culture. But it's amazing the sort of diversity of kind of advertisers and creative and ideas that the Super Bowl gives us every year.
Yeah. I mean, it's the only time in any country, in any event, where people literally sit down to not just watch the sport, but to watch the ads.
100%.
Like, you don't want to leave the room when the ads are on. You want to be there. Yeah. So like, you try to manage being in the room, and like, you don't want to miss a great ad. And it's the only time that everybody all talks about the ad. So like, it's in all, people like yourselves are like talking about it and grading them and giving their point of view. But that's happening at work too, and it's happening at home, and people are texting about the best ads and so forth. So it's really fun to be a part of that, to be in the conversation.
I hope of your audience, the folks who are directly in marketing, or who have Tim's job or aspire to have a job like Tim someday, his advice to just have fun with it. I could say that as the creative leader of a creative agency.
Yeah.
I think my staff would expect that. We don't hear a lot of clients say those words. I'm not sure I've ever heard a client say those words about Super Bowl. If anything, there's a lot of tension and pressure, and like, hey, big investment here. What are we doing? What do you got? You hear the sound of the clock on the wall. And I think that sets a tone for your team's culture to be free and radical. And I hope for more of you marketers out there to show up that way to your agencies. It will do more. It will put more wind in their sails than anything else you could do.
And I love that.
I mean, he's a creative person by trade.
But it's and emotionally you're right, but also data-wise you're right, because all the data would suggest that creativity is an enormous business multiplier.
Yeah.
And we don't treat it as that, and it's a real shame, because the pressure on CMOs to kind of go short term, avoid the risk, don't get into trouble, all the rest of it. It's great. It's really, really inspiring.
It's so funny. There's such a narrative about, the right message at the right time, rational ways to engage people in moments.
Yeah.
And I really, still believe ultimately everything we're offering everybody requires an irrational decision on their part. They need to be moved to irrationality to buy a thing or spend their hours on something. It requires a creative idea, a creative leap, and an emotional engagement to do it.
Yeah. And as soon as you understand why people buy what they buy and why they make the decisions they make, and you realize it's based on emotion, and that's how we're hardwired.
Right.
And then we go all in on rational features and benefits. It doesn't make sense.
Tim, I'll say one thing, Tim. Tim has a piece of feedback. He gives anybody who comes onto our NFL team at 72 and say, okay, I'm going to tell you what the feedback's going to be for the first 3 meetings. You don't even need to do the meeting if you don't want, but this is what the feedback's going to be. Make it more emotional.
That's true.
And then I think that'll still be the comment.
Make people feel something.
Yeah.
Make people really feel something. I mean, it's got to be smart, and it's got to make you think differently about the brand. But if you don't feel anything, and I think that's one of the dangers in our sort of short span of attention that we have, and the way that now with social media and some of the emerging platforms, everything is sort of short form, and everyone's like swiping to the next thing, that they don't have time to really actually feel anything. And I think that we have to be careful not to lose that craft that we have as marketers and as creative people. And I think that also with the emergence of AI and data at our fingertips and how to so forth, use that stuff to create bigger, more interesting ideas and to craft it and to give you insight into what things will actually make people think differently and make people feel things, right? So I think I'm not afraid of AI, because I know that we'll only use it in order to do things which will truly move people.
Exactly.
Right? We're not looking for that sort of like creative solution to things. If AI can help us get to a great creative place, fantastic. Like any technology, that's great. If data can help you get help you get closer to your fans, or find something out about them that will enable you to connect with them in a powerful way, fantastic. Right? But don't have that be the end result. I just think, today, with all the technology and so forth, that people are spending, CMOs, I'll just say it, CMOs are spending more time thinking about how not to get fired than they are about doing the right thing, right? And I think that, and they're trying to use data and trying to use AI and everything else to sort of prove out that what they're doing is effective, instead of just doing things that in their gut and then their collective experience will be powerful and will move things forward.
Yeah. Amen to that. Well, I think that's the perfect place to end, actually. That's a brilliant rallying cry. Thank you both. That's been amazing. Very excited.
Yeah,
and,
thank you.
I'm going to make sure I get down to the game in October. Wembley calling.
I think we will have seats for you, yes.
I'm going to be there with you.
Yes, that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well done, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening or watching Uncensored CMO. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please do hit the subscribe button wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching, hit subscribe there as well. I'd also love to get a review. Reviews make a big difference on other people discovering the show, so please do leave a review wherever you get your podcast. If you want to contact me, you can do. I'm over on X at Uncensored CMO, or on LinkedIn, where I'm under my own name, John Evans. Thanks for listening and watching. I'll see you next time.